Welcome to another episode of Digital Punks, your one-step destination for music NFTs and Web3. And today we've got a really special guest. His name is Alex Salibian. He's a highly accomplished Armenian-American music producer, best known for his work with a lot of renowned artists such as Harry Styles, Young the Giant, The Hat and the Heart, and many others. He's a classically trained musician, so Alex has made a significant impact also on the pop and the pop rock genres with his really exceptional production and co-writing skills that he's also going to talk about. Now, as one of the founders of the NVAK Collective, Alex is now poised to really revolutionize the music industry by nurturing and promoting emerging talent through really innovative approaches, and he's going to talk about that as well. So, and by harnessing the power of cutting-edge technologies like NFTs and Web3 that we have, Alex really aims to empower a lot of artists to take control of their careers, fostering creative freedom, and reshaping the way music is created, distributed, and experienced. So, with his vast industry experience and forward-thinking vision, Alex is truly a trailblazer in the world of music production and artist development, and we could not be more excited to have him. As always, we hope this conversation inspires artists to join the space and experiment, and fans to join, to become collectors, avid supporters of an artist, and follow their musical journey. So let's do it.
Let's go. All right. We got Alex with us. So glad to have you. To kick us off, tell us a little bit about yourself, how you grew up, what music influenced you. Yeah, just give us a little introduction. Who are you?
First off, thank you so much for having me. I'm really, really happy to be on here with you guys. So my name is Alex Salibian. I am a songwriter, record producer, record executive, and entrepreneur. I am based in Santa Monica, California, of Armenian American heritage. My parents immigrated here in the 70s. And I have had two lives. One has been in the studio, making records, writing and producing, and the other has been stepping outside of the studio, which is currently where I spend maybe about 75% of my time. That is developing artists, working on A&R, marketing, trying to redirect legal processes, monetization processes, and of course, venturing into the wonderful world of Web3 and using tools there to try to figure out how to achieve our greater mission. So it's a little bit of everything, but it's all based in music.
Mm-hmm. So before we dive into getting to know you a little bit more and finding out more about what NVAK is doing and what your mission is, I want to take it a little bit back and find out more about the person that's been shaping you up to be the last few years. So you've worked as a producer and a songwriter on really a number of records with well-known artists, and take us a little bit through this experience. Like, how has your background, you've been classically trained musician, and how has this influenced your approach to producing and co-writing in the pop and pop rock genres?
Yeah, I've had a tumultuous relationship with classical music through trying to, work my way through the pop music industry. A lot of my favorite producers, songwriters, and musicians actually have a jazz background. And I found that translates to pop music a little bit easier, but there are some really, really great influences of classical music that can be applied as well. But it wasn't until I met my mentor, who's a well-known producer named Jeff Basker, that I realized that I could take my understanding of theory, melody, harmony, rhythm, and simplify it into something that could be really, really useful when it comes to going in with a pop star and coming up with a compelling song that can be authentic, but also commercially viable. And I think this is the theme that actually has unfolded throughout even the business side of things in my life, but especially in the writing room, is simplification. How do we take complex thoughts and ideas and reduce them into themes and repetitive mantras, per se, that can communicate to a larger audience? And classical music is very, very good at doing that. It's all about themes, repetition, taking something that is quite complex and making it so a child could actually sing along or play it with one finger on the piano. So those were the things that I was thinking about. And the one drastically missing element is the lyric, which you don't get from classical music. But I've found that my lack of experience in lyric allowed me to kind of have a better gauge on what a really good lyric is, because I wouldn't pay attention to it unless it was really, really good. And I knew if a lyric jumped out and like made me feel something, I was like, that's a good lyric. So I've kind of tried to use that to my advantage and make sure that when I'm writing as well, if I can get that objective perspective, it's doing that same thing for me. But yeah, it's been a long learning process on figuring out how to train a long classical background and forget it all basically, and then approach music from a very childlike perspective.
Very nice. You worked on a lot of albums from famous artists. For example, Harry Styles, you worked on the first album, right?
Yes.
Can you share maybe a little bit something about your experience and maybe challenges you faced, and also how it influenced the final product maybe?
Yeah. So the Harry project was a big one, obviously. And it was myself, Jeff, my mentor, who I mentioned, and another one of my mentors, Tyler Johnson, who is known because he also produced Watermelon Sugar and As It Was, and co-wrote those songs as well. It was the three of us kind of working on the project together, and we had two other musical collaborators, Ryan Nashi and Mitchell Rowland, who have continued to work with Harry now. And it was us and Harry. And we made a little family unit, and we all got along so well, and actually went to Jamaica for 2 months to make the bulk of the record.
Nice.
It was incredible. We all stayed in a house together and, and just worked on the record constantly. But that benefit and that gift was also the greatest challenge, because we never knew, and this was it's comical, but we never knew when we were working and when we weren't. So even if we're sitting at dinner, and just after a 10-12 hour session in the studio, and then Harry started humming something or Mitchell started playing something in the car, like I remember Tyler and I would look at each other and be like, so are we taking out our voice memo? Like what, like that's actually really good. Like, do we act on this right now? And we did. And it was challenging mentally to be in that process for such a long time of like, we're always creating. Creating is just an exhausting and draining process. However, the results is one of my favorite songs on the record, called From the Dining Table, which is quite literally from the dining table. Mitch had his guitar out. He was fiddling with that guitar riff. Harry started humming. We're all exhausted but like kind of hashed out the song, and then realized, late at night, that we have to go back to the studio. And we went down and tracked it. So it's just one of those things where if people crave that environment, and it doesn't come very often. And I don't think I was aware enough at the time to realize how valuable that moment was, where the creative portal was open. And it was a huge, huge blessing that it was constantly flowing. And yeah, no matter how tired we were, we needed to be ready to go in and capture. We owed it to Harry and to his fans. So it resulted in some of my favorite records, because a lot of them ended up being those late night ideas where we'd have to go back in and like fix them. And then once, the portal closed and the record was done, it was like, well, when's that going to happen again? And it doesn't come around so often. So yeah, that was definitely a very fun and challenging experience, but I think led to some great music.
No, that's a great story, because at the end of the day, that's really what you also take back from the experience of crafting a record and working with other people, right? It's those exact memories where there was a spark in the air, like what you said also, at the dinner table, those stimulants that are in the air, like every time, like you can just not, you have to act on your intuition sometimes. When it comes around, it comes around. You cannot say, well, I'm really having a great dinner. I'm just going to push that away mentally right now. So one thing that comes to my mind is, so as a producer, how do you balance the artist's creative vision? Because I'm sure that Harry also, from his experience with One Direction, came in with his own creative vision. How do you balance it with your own ideas when you're collaborating on a project?
No, you're exactly right. He was eager and ready to get his vision out there, and also was wise enough to understand that he needed a team to put it together, because that isn't always the case. But I would say the most important thing is recognizing when the artist has a creative vision, a strong one, versus when they don't. Because it isn't always the case that the artist comes in the room. There's a lot of writing that happens where the artist does not know what they want to say yet. And those are the more difficult sessions, because whether you do it intentionally or not, if you're feeling creative that day, you can easily kind of bulldoze the project and you end up with a producer song, which sometimes can be great, but generally is not the thing that makes the magic. So I think first off is being aware. And if you're in a situation where the artist doesn't have a creative vision at the moment, sometimes it's better to go out to dinner, honestly. Like go out to dinner, hang out. You don't have to be making music constantly. It's about getting to the core of what they want to say and why they want to say it. Because once you have that, you start to almost create like a mental Pinterest board of like, okay, this is what you're saying. What colors that? What sound palette colors that? What lyrics help amplify that message? And as soon as you have those basic building blocks and they're communicated clearly between the artist and producer, then it's playtime. And I feel like I can get in there and have fun on the piano or the keys or whatever it might be, and know that I'm working within those limitations. Or it also gives me the freedom to not do any of that, because what they're trying to accomplish does not require those skills. And I can sit back and let them do their thing and push them and gently guide them, which a lot of artists need. I recently worked with an artist named Eddie Benjamin that's just like a savant. He can play everything. I'm like, here, you take the guitar.
The didgeridoo as well, or
sorry, didgeridoo? Oh yeah,
didgeridoo.
I'm sure he could crush it. I wouldn't put it past him to just pick up a didgeridoo and make a hit. But
you heard it here first.
Yes. We'll see it on the next
didgeridoo legend.
Yeah.
There you go.
But yeah, in that case, it takes a lot of willpower to let go too. And say, you know what, the artist has this. So it's a full spectrum, and it's just about, really doing the preliminary work.
All right. So we learned a lot about you as a producer and about your journey until you learned about Web3, NFTs. So you got a lot of experience in the music industry. And what kind of challenges have you observed in that time that maybe inspired you to enter the Web3 space and learn more about NFTs and the potential solutions that they offer?
Yeah, so after the Harry record, I took a break from producing, helped MD his first promo tour, and then came back to the States after that and started really getting interested in developing artists. It's something that Jeff always kind of instilled, and he's like, cool, you can go in with the Harry Styles and make a great record, but can you find talent and can you build something from scratch with them? And I was obsessed with that mission. I was like, what? Yeah, there are gems out there that people have not discovered. Like, what if I could be the producer that helps take them to the next level and get their first hit? And I had a rough 3 years, like a really rough 3 years trying to do that. It just, every artist that I spent days, months, years even working on and developing ended up getting dropped, having some shady situation with their direct team. The people weren't aligned on where it needed to go, and I didn't, get paid for any of my time, and it was just really, really frustrating. And it started getting me asking. I started interviewing producers. I was like, do you know how this works, by the way? Like, does the A&R have the leverage? Is the manager? Is it the public? Like, who are we working for? What happens with these records? Like, who is making these decisions? Like, they're just things that when you're in the studio trying to figure out how to play with a new pedal, you're not thinking about that. And you shouldn't be, frankly, but I started to, and I couldn't ignore that. So as I did more research, I started to uncover things like, okay, there are 100,000 or close to 100,000 daily songs uploaded to Spotify. So the market is extremely saturated. How do you break through that? Everything is based on virality, which is how you break through it, from TikTok leading to Spotify. So you're getting a lot of repeat stories and sounds because it's based on what's trending. And then that led me to dig deeper into the legal structures of it. And I started this work started happening when I met my co-founder, Tamar Caprillion, who has a deep background in the music industry as well. She was an artist signed to Clive Davis and Jimmy Iovine and had her whole 10-year tumultuous journey with highs and lows as well. We started looking into contracts and why do artists complaining about getting locked in for 10 years? Why is the contract structured like that? What about the revenue streams being delayed leads to those sort of decisions? And then this theme kept popping up of like, you always hear it, the people that make it in the music industry are the ones that just stay in long enough. Which is so true. Like whether you decide to be a barista for 15 years to get by, or your family can support, or you manage to jump from contract to contract, a lot of the time it's just about staying in long enough to find your voice and your niche. And fortunately, that takes a lot of time. And right now we're dealing with a market that has a very wealthy class and a very poor class, and there is no middle class. So as soon as I was able to kind of articulate that, I was like, okay, what, like the web 2 music industry, which just to generalize the traditional system, doesn't necessarily have the tools or the incentives to change that because there's still a lot of money in it. And it wasn't until jumping into web 3 and understanding the general ethos of that community and also the functionality and utility of an NFT, that we decided, okay, there is a real way to shift the artist development process using these tools to generate sustainable revenue streams that can like bringing revenue up at the front of the artist development process that can help mitigate some of these issues, create an opportunity for shorter term contracts, lengthen runways so artists don't have to be just trying to get the TikTok to take off all day, every day, etc. So it's kind of a long-winded answer, but it was viewing all of these different things that made the whole team kind of be like, okay, we should be dedicating a lot of our time to understanding this space.
So this is also where you then came up with the concept of let's found a collective, and you've got different people with different expertise on board that are taking care of, they bring a lot of industry wealth in there. You've also said, well, the current stigma that the industry is providing, that that you basically need to have this compound effect over time to build your music catalog. And I would be interested. So you've got some great artists on there, including Annika Rose. What's the overarching vision or goals that you have for the artists that you work with? And especially in terms of utilizing NFTs and maybe also other emerging technologies to propel their careers forward.
Yeah, so a couple points there. The collective was built out of necessity because no one was really paying attention to what we're doing. So we're like, why don't we go find people that we admire and get them to understand our vision and help us spread the word? And then from there, we decided that for our artists, including Annika, we want to deliver high quality music, A&R first. That is really like at the core of what we do. We want to tell new stories that we feel like have not been told in the music industry. And we want to use equitable deals in order to do so. So we also have a nonprofit arm called NVAK Foundation that offers artist care to all of our artists, and we're growing the pool of artists that we can provide it to outside of our roster as well. So it's providing mental health services like therapy, psychiatry, even healthcare, Reiki, acupuncture, tennis lessons, production lessons, songwriting, like everything for artist well-being the foundation provides. It's honestly our superpower. Yeah, and it's been the thing that has led to also a longer runway for our artists. Rosa Lynn, who had her hit last year, like she was in a really dark place, and the foundation was able to kind of guide her through it before Eurovision happened and the hit happened. And through our development process with Annika, you know, she's got a lot on her plate. Web3 does not make the process easier. It just makes it less volatile. And it makes it so you can do things your way, but you still have to work really, really hard to pull in those fans. It's like the equivalent of standing out on the street corner and handing out flyers to pull in fans. It's a lot of work. So those resources go into play a big part in what we want to achieve with our artists. So we want them to be able to create high quality art consistently, but not having to do the 6-week cadence that is required by Spotify to get boost the algorithm.
Feed the algorithm.
Yeah, I get it though, because like it's the more content, the more revenue that they're able to make. And as we get into further discussions around the future of music, you guys will find that I actually don't really have a bone to pick with Spotify, and I think that might lead to an interesting conversation. But for artists, we want them to create high quality music. We want them to tell unique stories and have a unique way to tell those stories. And we want them to be able to jump into short-term deals with us that give them security in a way where they get to decide if they want to continue working with us. And we can work together to find their fans at the very beginning of their career, and monetize them in a responsible way, so they can be recouping and we can be mindful of the money that we're spending. So they're not just digging themselves into debt that keeps them in a contract for 10 years. Because we just think that we can create strong enough music that doesn't have to be the case. Yes, it might take 3 years, but it doesn't have to take 10. It's still a long process. So yeah, the ultimate vision is to be able to achieve those things.
I love what you said about that you're not just for the, let's say, like the usual process of developing an artist, but what we've seen over the last few years, that's also been part of the shaping of a new industry through, you know, social media influence. It's really important to take care of your mental health, because there's, and you will also always read about it, Justin Bieber, Anderson Parks, whoever it is, canceling their tours because they have to take care of themselves first, and, you know, get their mind straight, which, you know, they need the time. And, you know, I feel like we have to give them the time, but the industry is not providing the time sometimes. So it's really great that you're doing that. I think that's really differentiates you from a lot of different other players in the field. So I immediately love that about you. So I'm probably gonna buy everything now from you guys. All right. Can you share a specific example how NFTs have positively impacted an artist you've worked with? So you said Annika Rose is on the roster, Rosalind, Talia Lahu.
Yeah.
And what lessons can others learn, maybe like from your experience?
Yeah, so we're the deepest in the process with Annika, obviously. She's the one that many in the Web3 space are familiar with. Rosalind and Talia Lahoud are actively starting the process that Annika started last year, which is handing out POAPs for early supporters that come in and show up to a Twitter space, join the Discord, go to a show, anything to just give ownership to the early believers. And the reason this approach I think is so valuable is I just know when I was 12 and listening to Metallica, if I had the opportunity to get that, I would be up there right now, you know, and benefiting from that. So, but in terms of the benefit so far, like, or this early in the process, we have generated about 2.5 times more revenue from the NFT sales than we have from streaming so far. Granted, we haven't had our big push yet, which is great. When you think about that scaled over time, like it's not just 2.5 times more, but it's also something that generally would not be included at all. So when that goes towards recoupment, it's really valuable. And we're not talking about, like, you know, we hear stories of like 100 ETH generated or anything like that. It's not like, yes, those can happen, but that is the equivalent of something going viral. We're talking about building brick by brick from the ground up, finding your fans. If you're not doing a Twitter space, then go stand out on the street and hand out a flyer. Like, you got to find your fans. And one thing that we have pushed people to do is, like, if you aren't feeling the Web3 NFT thing or unsure about it, see who is consistently liking your TikToks and Instagrams and invite them to join a group chat with you. Just start there. Just communicate with them. But the thing that happened with Annika is we held an event for her 2 weeks ago at Neuhaus and here in LA, and over 300 people, so 315 people came through on a rainy LA day. And for an artist at her stage, like getting that many people to a live event is a big deal. That's not easy to do. Even for Rosa Lynn, who has a hit record right now, getting her to fill up 250 cap rooms around the country is really difficult. It's a big inflection point when you get there, and then it's hugely rewarding, but getting there is really, really tough. So by doing the work, handing out the pull-ups, holding the Twitter spaces, doing panels, we found that Annika's gained real fans, people that will drive through the rain in a city that literally shuts down when it's raining to go and see her, play a few songs, talk about what she's doing, connect with her, ask her questions. And like, that is the biggest win. That is all you could ask for. Because while it's 350 now, that might be 415, 500, 600. It just grows.
Yeah, it totally makes sense. And I mean, if you have those dedicated fans, then they are worth much more than this. Chris and I talk a lot about this as well. Chris is a big fan of the 1000 core fans theory as well. So that plays into that as well. All right, let's switch gears a little bit for now. You're actively building a virtual world, right? Making music kind of a gamified experience. So gamification, I think, is a big topic right now. And what unique elements or experiences do you hope to create for fans through your virtual world that you're building? And I think this is an Unreal Engine, right?
Yes. Yeah. So we're building it in Unreal Engine 5. Our third co-founder, Tamer Diab, is an incredible computer graphics officer and VFX supervisor. He's worked on Avatar, on Iron Man 3, on Jungle Book. Like he's pulled in billions of dollars in the film industry, and he doesn't have equity in those projects. So that was our bonding point, where him and his team don't have equity in those projects. So we decided that we are going to create what we call a music video game. It's a music video and a video game. And the reason we did that is the music video since 1981 has been amplifying that story that the artist is trying to communicate to their fans. And it does so successfully enough where it really hasn't changed format other than its distribution going from MTV to YouTube to TikTok, etc. But the general concept of it hasn't changed for a long time. And our thought was, okay, what happens if you can actually interact with it? What does that mean? And then what happens if you're rewarded for interacting with it like you would be in a game gaining status? Okay, then what happens if the other fan behaviors you do outside of the game also contribute to that same status, and that you own that status and you can do with it whatever you wanted? That was the general framework of it. So it's like a traditional fan club meets a video game, meets a music video, meets Delta Sky Miles, like all in one. It's like all on chain where you own it, etc. And so we've built the initial music video game for Annika Rose's song Bruises, and we're going to be launching that on May 9th. Pre-sale goes live May 9th. So very excited about that. There'll be a lot of marketing materials coming out soon that'll direct people on how to engage with it. And it'll also describe the why. But from that launch, you know, the launch is going to be first person. You're in the game, you're navigating through it. There are very simple gamified concepts in there, collecting tokens, unlocking the next level, etc. There's also going to be a room that's called the listening room where you can mint an unreleased demo before it's out in the public. Again, a very simple concept, something that we're all familiar with in the Web3 space, but just starting off the process. From there, over the next 6 months, we're going to be unfolding different or unlocking different activations. So incorporating a music streaming SDK, opening the world so you can navigate freely through all the different levels, creating discounts from collecting the tokens so you can get discounts by doing different things, incorporating spatial audio, in-game minting, proof of behavior, and then eventually avatars and multiplayer.
Nice.
It'll get to that point.
So the fans always want to come back.
Yes.
Basically,
yes.
right?
So it puts the power in the hands of the artist where they can say, hey, I'm going to be releasing my EP and it's going to roll out in this way. And you tell your fans what you're going to do, and they can go back to the game to get the next demo, to get the merch that goes along with it, to get tickets. Eventually, my like epitome where I'm just going to be so stoked on this is if we can get two groups of fans in multiplayer to play capture the flag in the game, and then the winner gets a meet and greet or something like that with Annika. So you're actually doing cool things together with other fans in order to win real valuable things if you care about the artist. So it's a space that the artists can take the power back and go direct to consumer. So we say direct to fan engagement. It's really just the music industry's way of saying direct to consumer, which is such a common practice when you think about other industries, but it feels so new to the music industry, which is funny.
Yeah. And the cool thing is also because you're developing that yourself, so you've got the creative control sort of. You're not depending on a third party to do that for you or say, well, we want to extend the virtual world with another room. Can we do that? And no, we don't have time. The developers are working on something else. You know, you're circumrounding that, which is really good. Do you think, because generally video games, they convert or they monetize a lot better than music does. And when we look at the revenue that it drives on a yearly basis, I mean, look at Call of Duty doing like 100 million or so. And I mean, exceptional. Do you think that this is going to change how music is also discovered in a sense in the future?
That's the goal. And it depends on, I mean, it will happen. I don't know when. It depends on how quickly people adopt and find value in it. So one of their main challenges is lowering the barrier to entry. So we are making it where you only need an email address to enter the music video game. And simple things like that. Again, really simple concepts for us. But when you're talking to the demographic of fans that consume music on Spotify, this is new to them. Like the majority of music listeners aren't aware of some of these concepts. So it's going to take a lot of work and a lot of artists collaborating together and getting their fan communities to work together in order for it to become a discovery tool. As of right now, I really seeing it being a portal for artists who have been discovered and have fans that want to be converted into super fans to actually have an ability to do so, which doesn't exist yet. And then after that, I do think it could turn into a discovery platform.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So speaking of virtual worlds, last time we spoke with Josh Schwartz, who's behind Chili, the project, and he told us about his new live performance where they put on motion tracking suits and then they perform live at the NFT NYC and then also at the same time in spatial in the metaverse, which I think is a great new way for live music. Do you see those kinds of things more in the future, and also maybe augmented reality also for live music shows? What's your thought on that?
I mean, 100%. It's for sure going there, has already gone there. I will say that the focus for NVAK isn't necessarily there because we are studio rats. And you know, that's what we know. We know, like I took me so long to understand how an agent actually works in the music industry. So what we are like more interested in is like, how do we create a really great song and then get that song to connect with an audience? And then when it comes to letting that translate to a live show, there are a lot of things we can do. For example, like if the artist films a music video and uses mocap to get all of that and then gives it to Tamer and he's able to create that world, that same world that's the music video in Unreal Engine, we can convert that into an in real life experience as well. So there's fluidity. And that's my favorite thing, is when all of the different parts contribute towards one singular meaning and one singular message. In songwriting, it's called prosody. It's the same in cooking. It's salt, fat, heat, and acid. You want to make one flavor that's really compelling. So that's the exciting thing to me, is like, as these technologies become more accessible, democratized, and different sectors of the music industry communicate more in the ethos of Web3, I'm hoping that we'll see fluidity from the song creation process to the social media marketing of it, to the more traditional marketing, to then the live. It all kind of goes into one very strong narrative. And I think it's going to take that for artists to break through, and them being really intentional with their lane. And it goes back to the original thing with creative vision. It's like, what do you want to say? Why do you want to say it? And then you get your team to help you do that.
Makes sense.
No, that's a very good point. So let's wrap this one up and go to the future, sort of the future of music. Let's go to the future. Exactly. Back to the future. So you already said you don't have a bone to pick with Spotify.
Yeah.
But I need to ask, just so we get this flowing a little bit.
Yeah.
You're advocating for artists' rights basically because you're developing artists and you're giving them a voice, right? So what are your thoughts on the potential ethical implications of, so Spotify, they've rolled out something called discovery mode, which gives artists more exposure, but at the cost of reduced royalties, which some say sort of sounds like the payola, pay-to-play model. Yeah. How do you think this might affect emerging musicians that are, trying to get a voice now?
It's not great. It's not great, but I do think it's important to recognize the purpose of these tools in human life. Spotify has made it so now I think it was close to 500 million people that use the platform can have any song they want whenever they want. 200 million of them pay for it. The other 300 million don't. That's magical in terms of quality the quality of human life and the consumer. And if that is the goal of Spotify, this model makes sense to me, because the thing is, they locked into deals with major record labels that they're not making a bunch of money. Like, the margins are razor thin for Spotify. But the thing that we're thinking of is like, cool, are we viewing Spotify as the main revenue stream for artists? And if so, then no, that's terrible. But if we're not viewing it as the main revenue stream for artists, then it's doing its job just fine. And I think that's where direct-to-fan engagement and Web3 really comes into play, because an established artist can rely on touring, merch, brand partnerships, syncs, licenses, a lot of other avenues. And we're in this weird shift where, like, yeah, we still remember the days where selling, CDs and vinyl was so profitable. But we've shifted the model. And I truly just think people are kind of hanging on to the past a little bit, where like Spotify isn't replacing that. It's exposure. That's what the platform is. And it is valuing itself based on the size of its catalog. And the more people uploading to Spotify, the harder it is to be found on Spotify, and the more influential the power of the gatekeepers that handle the editorial playlisters is. So I just think we have to be really realistic about that, because even if you think about the revenue from 100 million streams, which is a big song, that is not easy to get. Like, even if you're on a favorable indie label deal that has put in a small amount of marketing and recording budget to get you there, it's a 50-50 split, you own your masters, you're going to get that revenue probably 2 years after you wrote the song, and it's going to allow you to live in LA for like 14 months. That's it. And that's 100 million, like, that's a hit song, so that's where I'm like, guys, we're like looking at the wrong thing. Like, there has to be other options. There has to be ways to get those 10 people that like your TikToks into a group chat and start talking to them. and creating NFT collections, finding a way to take what you want to say, why you want to say it, direct it to a group of people that are going to connect with that and support you as an artist, and start monetizing it. Because then getting 60K a year to live in a studio apartment in LA might actually be doable. And it's about increasing that runway. So then when you do get the 100 million streams, you can get the opening slot on that tour. And then once you get the opening slot, you can sell merch. And then you get your first headlining tour. And then you just kind of build from there. But so that's my general view on it. It's just like, I think, and I could be wrong, but I really, really do think it's just about reframing what the purpose of Spotify is.
Mm-hmm. So building on what you just mentioned, do you think Web3 and NFTs can help artists overcome issues like you just mentioned, revenue sharing or creative control, and the influence of major record labels maybe as well?
So at the end of the day, it's all about leverage. Unfortunately, it's a music business. It's all people with relationships doing favors for other people that they think they can get something back from. And the one thing since day one in the music industry that has trumped any of that stuff is fans, because fans equal leverage. When an artist has fans, the label cannot tell them what to do because the fans are the one that are paying. So, and we've all seen what happens when an artist mobilizes their fan army. It's not pretty, and the artist gets what they want. But without fans, the artist can't do anything because the label's the one fronting the money. The label one's paying for the staff. They're the ones taking all the risk. And frankly, if they want to keep their doors open and continue doing this, kind of understand the label's point of view on it. So it's the artist's responsibility to say, I have something to say, a reason to say it, and I have people who want to hear what I have to say, and they need to prove that. And that's where Web3 becomes very, very valuable, is it finally creates a space in which that communication can happen, and the people who are listening get to receive rewards and value from listening and speaking back. It creates a two-way conversation between the fan and the artist. And that's really, really powerful. And that's what I'm excited for to happen over the next couple of years. That's going to change a lot of things. I don't know exactly how, but I know it will.
Nice.
Yeah. No, it's very valuable what you're also saying. So I think what you also mentioned concerning streaming and Spotify, there's obviously a place for streaming, because we like the casual listening when we go on the road and we have everything in our pocket and we can just pull from that. There's still, when we take a look at Web3 and I don't know, decentralized music streaming platforms like Audius, for instance, that is trying to gain traction, build traction. They still have to prove themselves in terms of building a user base and striking deals with all these labels, etc. Because it needs to be attractive to go from Spotify to Audius.
Yeah.
And so we've got this one model, and those are the people. Sometimes you don't know who's listening to your music, so it's hard to pull them into a new experience. So we've got this one revenue stream, and we've got this other revenue stream that artists can build up to build more in-depth relationships. Now, how do you envision this technology as a whole shaping the future of the industry?
So it's for me, there's many aspects. There are a lot of different ways, and I've spoken to so many people that are approaching it from different angles that I think are going to be valuable. But the thing that I'm most excited about is what I've mentioned a few times, is this, like, even when you look at Delta Sky Miles, like the rewards program aspect. And like, I don't own my Delta Sky Miles. Like, Delta can do whatever it wants with those hard-earned miles. But what I really like is a membership that I own. And can do with it what I want. So, for example, let's say you're streaming on Audius, and there's one great thing about that. That the money is going straight to the creator immediately. And again, that's not really Spotify's fault. They needed to create a catalog so that people could say, hey, I can access any song I want whenever I want. In order to do that, you have to strike a deal with the people who own the catalogs. Those are the major record labels. And it just is what it is. But with Audius, you can stream it and you can be like, cool, my cash is going straight into the creator's pocket, which is amazing. But where it gets exciting is as a listener, if the artist decides to give you a token for being an early streamer, an early listener, an early listener in a Twitter space, and they work hard to ensure the value of that and that you are being recognized for that over time. Imagine if eventually you're at the status where you're, I was an early fan of The Neighborhood before they had that song Sweater Weather. It was on Hype Machine. It ended up being a big hit 2 years after it was on Hype Machine. And if I had the chance, I would have put in money on that band and been like, these guys are going to be great. And I heard a story of someone being the same way with The Weeknd. I wasn't, but this person was an early supporter of The Weeknd, and now they can't afford to go to a show because it's so expensive. And what if that person had an early Weeknd token, and then because of that and all the amount that they've listened to his music, they were able to not only get tickets to a show, but if they weren't able to attend the show because they had class or work, they could rent that to someone else. They actually own that status and they could do with it whatever they wanted. And that, to me, that concept of IP ownership, and I mean, that is the basis of Web3. It's decentralized and it's based around owning the builders and users owning. Then that to me is where I can't even begin to describe the amount of benefits. It's vast, and I think people are going to get really, really creative with how they apply it to music, particularly.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So, as a last question for this block of topics, while talking about the future of music, we can't not talk about AI.
Yeah.
So, how do you see AI influencing the music industry? Maybe potential benefits, drawbacks. What's your take on AI? Do you use AI yourself, and how do you see it for the music industry?
I am fascinated with it. My brain is wired a little differently. I am a creative, and when it comes to really understanding it, I will say I have people on our team that are way better versed than me. But there are a few conclusions. I think there's sometimes a benefit to being a little bit simple-minded when it comes to this stuff. But like, yes, it's going to take over some jobs. Maybe a lot of jobs. Like, that is just something that I think we should all be prepared for. However, we have to be asking ourselves, what are those jobs and do we really want to be doing them? And that is something that's interesting to me, because in the music creation process, like, the spark of a song, I don't know, maybe it will be replaced, but there's so much more to it than that. And that artist fan relationship. So I'm not really worried about it creating beats, even coming up with lyrical concepts that might be targeted to a specific demographic. Because that's like, if you think about that with ChatGPT, like, you can say, write me a song that is going to work for an 18 to 24-year-old demographic coming out of Portland. And it can probably source all of whatever's going on in social media in from that specific region and draw on trigger words and topics that could make a compelling song. And if you can turn around quick enough and then ask the same AI to create content to post on TikTok for that, I'm sure someone's going to make a hit like that in a matter of like 2 weeks. That's going to happen, which is cool, and it will be disruptive. But the thing that it also does is free up space, where it forces you to kind of think at a higher level. And I think humans are very much capable of that. There is higher level problem solving, multidimensional problem solving, intuition, and other things that go into a creative industry that, at least in the foreseeable future, AI is not going to be able to replace. And I am of the belief that it will be supplemental. It won't bulldoze. People will be bulldozed, though, if they're not paying attention. And they might be sitting in a job category that can be replaced by AI. But at that point, it's like, it's time to try to figure out how to work with it and be like, okay, I can, like, cool, bring this tool in, but you need me to work with it in order to optimize this and understand it. So I really, really hope simple education starts becoming a common practice, because it is hard to comprehend. And I think that's going to be the most difficult thing to swallow here.
Do you think, because I need to ask the question before we get to the more the personal part, can you see yourself, because you're a songwriter, you're a producer, can you see yourself using AI to enhance your musical creations that you're doing? Because essentially, producers, songwriters, they've been working with samples and beats, that sometimes you can derive from already existing material, so that's there for you already. So, and an AI takes it maybe a step forward. Let's say like you're taking a song out of your music catalog, I don't know, a Harry song, and you're analyzing it, you're breaking it down into different components, you're doing the MIDI track out of that, and then maybe you have the AI do something similar to make it sound like that, which is your new IP. Can you see yourself doing that?
I don't see why not.
Yeah.
Everyone benefits, because the thing now is, like, along with that technology is the increased ability to release music with smart contracts that encode those files with the correct metadata. And as long as that happens, and Harry's being compensated, Mitchell's being compensated, those people are being compensated, everyone wins.
Best case scenario.
But if it starts being used and just like distributed, and people are just eating other people's IP, and it's not being, the metadata isn't being tracked, like, that's going to be ugly. But I do know quite a few companies that are hyper focused on ensuring that, okay, splitting up stems, redistributing them, they're encoded with the correct metadata. So whenever it's manipulated, the people are compensated, and that's huge.
No, it needs to be ethical.
Yeah. Everything needs to be mindful, and it's not going to be. But I do think over time, like with any new technology, people overreact. There's overcompensation, and then there's blowback, and then it goes too far in the other way. And then over time it settles in the middle. So I don't know, it's been like that forever. And I think we're about to experience an overuse of the technology. And then there's going to be a big blowback, and people are going to become way too sensitive. And then it's going to end up being somewhere in the middle where we learn to live with it in a productive way. I don't know if that's going to take 2 decades, 3 decades, or 5 years. I'm not sure.
Oh, great words.
Yeah.
Nice.
All right.
I think that's a good end for the future of music part. Let's go to the who is Alex outside of music part to learn a little bit more about you. Are there any hobbies, activities that you like doing?
It's ever changing. Right now, I am on a big watch kick. I'm obsessed with watches. It is where I spend all my free time. I started by just looking at them, then purchasing a few, then swapping straps, now actually taking them apart, and figuring out how they work.
Them apart.
Amazing.
Yeah, they're
and
really
back together as well.
Not yet. Not yet. Haven't figured that one out yet. That's the next step. But you caught me early in the process. It's just it's nice to have something that is engineered so well and serves such a simple purpose. It's very therapeutic, and it's so brilliant the way that these watches have been put together and last for so long. And of course, it has a storytelling aspect, which, if you can tell, is the theme. It's like the watches tell stories. One of my favorite watches is from my uncle, that actually was from Betholtz. And there's just a narrative there. He was into cars and planes, and it just tells that story. So that's been really soothing for me. Otherwise, dog walks with Casey over here. And then I'm married, so making sure that I spend a good amount of time with my wife is also very important. But I'm definitely in startup mode right now. So it hasn't been balanced, I would say, but working towards it.
Fast moving, yeah.
Yeah.
If you could travel back in time and you could have a conversation with your younger self, what advice or insights would you share regarding life and your journey in the music industry?
Yeah, great question. Because it's a frustrating process, and it's so, like, the music industry forces you to put your ego aside, which is something most people learn much later in life. And I've dealt with so many young producers now that are acting similarly to how I acted, and it's it's like bear hugging an idea of how they think it should be. And that's what I did too. And I would just say everything happens for a reason, and to trust the process. Make sure that you're surrounded with good people, and that you're spending your days with people that you actually admire, for sure. And that was something I was pretty good at early on. I was like at a good radar on like, this is a genuine human being. They're not gonna, try to manipulate me. But once you're there, then you gotta let go. There is no way I could have planned my route. There's no way I could have planned going from being a sociology major at UCLA to interning for Jeff Basker to becoming a producer to working on Harry Styles to then leaving all of that, meeting Tamar, starting a record label, jumping into Web3, and now having this. Like, no one can plan that.
Right.
Yeah. But it happens. So let go, and trust the process. Do your best work every day, and enjoy it.
Yeah, that's a great message. Absolutely. So if you were not in the music industry, is there an alternative career path do you think you might have pursued? And if so, why does it appeal to you? Maybe the watches?
More than would I be a watchmaker? I don't know if I could have done that. I definitely I do need something that doesn't have a ceiling. That was something that was very important to me. I think it might be a first generation thing, just being my parents being immigrants. Like, it's kind of this need and this desire to be able to be free and to do whatever you want to do. I was very close to becoming an art major in college. Also wanted to apply and become an architecture major, both creative, obviously, but both also require entrepreneurial skills. So I think it's that combination of using both sides of the brain, being creative, but also being strategic and organized, and requiring a level of empathy and communication with other humans in order to succeed. Like, it's that human connection that ends up being the most valuable thing in it. But also making something out of nothing. So those were the two. I think just painting and then architecture would be something maybe one day.
Yeah. Sounds great. Okay,
you guys are great with timing.
Well done. We learned a lot of things about you. Thanks. There were so many really great infos in this, and things that people can take away from this. But the last minute is yours. We always want the guests to have the last minute to tell the listeners whatever they want. So the stage is yours. Go ahead.
Oh my gosh. Well, I think my team would kick me if I wasn't like, May 9th, go and check out Annika Rose, NVAK Collective. Like the Twitter is at NVAK Collective, NVAK. By the way, that's short for the word NVAK Kel.
We'll put it in the show notes.
Okay, wonderful. So check it out. You'll get to read more about what we're doing. We have mirror posts that describe a lot of the things we talked about. Follow me, reach out to our team, ask questions, be curious, and be bold with what you're doing, because now's the time. This is when everyone's, has the ability. It doesn't happen very often. So yeah, I think that's it.